Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of How to Get My Job. We sit down with amazing people within the design and product industry and ask them how their career started, evolved, and what advice they have for those coming after them. Joining us today is Stephen Flynn, a UX writer at Tides. Hey Stephen, how you doing?
Hey Danielle, I'm very good. How are you?
Good. So yeah, your career is really interesting because you started off in, I think, the music industry.
Yeah, that's
Um,
correct. Yeah.
yeah, and then like made your way into tech and the digital industry. So I'm really excited to hear about your story today. So let's jump into it with the first question, which is,
Okay.
how did you get your first job in UX writing?
Yeah, so my path to UX writing has been a really interesting one, actually. As you probably know, UX writing is still a relatively new discipline too. So I think that a lot of people like myself have quite interesting entry points into the field. Always been a keen reader and writer. I studied English literature in university. I did things like I covered sport and music for the college paper, and I really enjoyed that. And I suppose that kind of gave me the writing bug a bit. And that ultimately led me to working as a freelancer for a host of music blogs. And yeah, working in music was something I always wanted to do. When I was in my early 20s, I ended up working for a music magazine, which was a really amazing experience. Meant I got to interview like a bunch of my heroes and some loads of really cool people. But I suppose I'm always been quite outgoing and process driven. And then I spent much of like the next decade or so, mostly working in PR with some commercial PR experience, but mostly in music PR. And alongside my PR work, I do things like write artist bios, bunch of press releases, etc. I mentioned I also worked in commercial PR for a while as well, and like I did so much different stuff there. It wasn't always fascinating work, but it did mean that I got to write copy for a lot of different types of audiences. So I wouldn't say I loved that experience, but as I said, it did help me diversify my writing skills a lot, and with a lot of technical stuff that I wasn't always doing before. Anyway, when I returned back to the UK, I returned to a company I worked for previously. But as the pandemic took hold, I was working in events. I realized I kind of maybe lost the love of working in that area a bit and wanted to challenge myself to do something a bit different. So in terms of getting into UX, I'm quite fortunate to have a brother who works in design. He's a product lead for a very well-known Swedish payments company. And I was considering a career change at the time. And after consulting with him, I thought I'd give design a go. And I think design appealed to me on a bunch of different levels. And this is stuff that he was filming me in on. It's quite creative. Every day is different. Unlike PR, it's very data and research driven as well. But all this said, it wasn't until a few months in where I was doing a UX course that I actually learned about UX writing specifically. And obviously, I'm very glad I did. So yeah, so realizing that I could combine, I suppose, my writing background with a career in design was a really big eye opener from here. I spent a lot of time listening to relevant podcasts. There's one by a guy called Yuval. He runs the UX Writing Hub, which I call like pretty essential listening for anyone who wants to get into a career in UX writing. And there's another like really awesome Instagram page, which is ran by a guy called Xander, who runs a boot camp called Memorizely. And that really helped me advance my Figma skills. So both of them were really interesting. And following the course, I applied for a couple of roles, and I started at Tide in January of this year as a UX writer. So Tide, to people who maybe don't know, is defined as a neobank. We're known now as a scale up, as with more than 1,000 employees, but it's similar to the likes of Revolut, Monzo, etc. But we only we only cater, I should say, to SMEs. I work with a really great bunch of inspiring, supportive people. And yeah, it's just been a fantastic place to embed myself in the design world.
Amazing, amazing. And I guess you've given us a few tips there on like
Yeah.
podcasts and places that were great for you upskilling, learning more about this area. That leads quite nicely into our next question, which
Okay.
is, what are the most important qualities a UX writer could have?
This is a great question, and one I've been asked a number of different times, actually. And I think the first thing to point out is that there's so much more to it than just being like a competent and distinguished writer. Obviously, speaking the language of design, understanding design fundamentals is really important. And yeah, I should also point out, like, I don't think you could do one without the other. I think these qualities can be learned. But for a first-time learner, and you know, we're all that at some stage, they're not always easy to wrap your head around. I think speaking about the language of design specifically, I think that's something that really comes with experience. And like, I remember when I started out at Tide, and that was only in January this year, but one of the things I did was I made a note to question literally everything that I didn't understand and return to it later. And yeah, as you might imagine, like, I'd not worked in a banking sector before, so there was really a lot of stuff that that I had to wrap my head around. So on that point, I'd say, like, it's important for a UX writer, or at least I think it is, but to not be too shy and to be reserved. And I'd say this is the same for anybody coming into design as well. So there's just a lot to understand in terms of the products. And I think it's important that you're confident and assertive enough to always reach out to the relevant people in your company, be it designers, product guys, even the SEO copywriters. I'll give you an example on that. I'm actually mentoring a girl who's interested in a career as a UX writer at the moment. At Tide, I've guided her throughout a UX course that she's doing. And she really has like the writing down, like she's really good at that stuff. But I explained to her as well that like she needs to understand design and showcase this through a portfolio. And I think for design and research specific roles, especially, I think it's important to remember, like, this is a really competitive industry and a lot of people want to get into it. And a lot of people leaving design courses, they might have backgrounds in, say, graphic design or, say, psychology. So really, unless you're after like an internship or an entry-level role, I think it's really important that you distinguish yourself from the competition and really put your best foot forward. And I think as well, like, really do your homework on the industry. Understand that there's, like, as a UX writer, there's so much more to just having a good grasp of the English language. So like, you might have a background in user research, that's going to be highly valued. Like for me, I had like the ability to conduct interviews as I worked as a freelance journalist before, and I talked about that a lot. And also like understanding the importance in general of research to the design process and web design skills. Anything, you know, that can clearly showcase a flair for design is going to be really valued.
Nice. I love that. And I think the first one you mentioned about always asking questions, that's actually come up quite a few times on the podcast. And nice. I think that's just a great skill and quality to have
for sure
in any career. And I think a lot of people are a bit scared or find asking questions a bit scary, because you don't want to look like you don't know
well, this is the thing. I think, yeah, totally. But I think like not everybody, especially when it's your first job in UX, like expects you to know everything, right? So like, just don't be shy, don't be reserved, put your hand up, ask as many questions. Like it might sound silly in hindsight when you look back at it a few months later, but like, it's the best way to learn. And I think people admire you more for asking than not asking.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to speak to you for longer, but we've actually come to our last question, which is, what's the best career advice you've ever been given?
This is a bit of a funny one, because I think in general, I've always been guided in my career by things I'm passionate about, be it like writing, communications, music, etc. My father was a respected journalist in Ireland, and one of the things that he used to say to me was, if you love your job, you won't work a day in your life. I'm not sure I've loved every day of my working career, but I do think, for me at least, you'll do your best work if you're in some way passionate about what you're doing. So I think that's why I've taken to a career in UX writing really well. It's fast paced, but it's also really creative. So you're using design tools such as Figma, you're making copy suggestions all day. But really, and it is a bit of a cliche, but every day really is different. So like, I work across like loads of screens, loads of different products, and like, there's like a nice satisfaction knowing that like hundreds of thousands of customers are like seeing my copy every day. And I'm also given great autonomy too. And another thing is, like, UX writing has also got great career opportunities. And yeah, I just like the feeling that I'm working for a company that's genuinely passionate, I suppose, about helping SMEs and providing a great banking experience for them. So yeah, I think if you're generally interested and passionate about what you do, you'll go the extra mile, I guess, with your role. A few other things I think I should point out with regards to advice is is that just like you get out what you put in as well. And this is another classic from my father. This is definitely something I think more and more of as I get older myself. And yeah, I was just really attracted to a career at Tide because it gives you great opportunities to learn other skills too and grow professionally and personally. So I think when you work hard and work constantly, you'll reap the rewards. What else does I want to say on advice is, find a great mentor in general. And don't be shy about reaching out to people. I think people actually like in a lot of cases when you reached out to them. Like I mentioned, my brother was like a really awesome mentor for me, but I also chatted to like career guidance professionals, UX researchers, product people, and just like loads of UX professionals in general. And that was before I even began to apply for a job. So I'd say just absorb as much information as you can. But yeah, just having one person in your corner who can advocate for your hard work, maybe help you out on LinkedIn, assist you with your portfolio, help you with job applications, interviews, etc., is really helpful. So I think as this is the last question, I'd say like if there's anyone who does want to reach out to me, I'd absolutely love to hear from them. It's just Stephen with PH, Flynn, Foynn. I'm at Tide. You'll find me on LinkedIn fairly easily. Or you can also reach out to me by email. It's just stephen.flynn@tide.co. And yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody who wants to get in touch.
Amazing. Thanks, Stephen. That's so kind of you. I think also what you said about, being someone who did a career switch in your 30s, I think that will be inspirational to a lot of people, because there are a lot of people who, when you reach a certain age and you may not be happy with where you are and you've always wanted to go into something, or you're looking at another career and thinking, I'll never get into that because I don't have the right, experience. I think, what you've said will be inspiring and will probably put a lot of people at ease if they have anxieties around this.
I hope so, because I know I had loads of them. So like it's just knowing that someone else has done it is really quite comforting, quite helpful when you're trying for a new role and to pivot into something new entirely.
100%. And then also I do definitely agree with your dad on the more you put into something, the more you get out. And
for sure,
if you are passionate about your job and what you do, it doesn't sometimes feel like work. I do. I'd
say sometimes, but like there's difficult days like every job, but on the whole, I really love it. And looking forward to what the next few years bring in the design world.
Nice. Yeah, it's so nice to hear someone who's actually happy about what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's left us on a really nice positive note. I'm feeling pretty inspired myself. It's been great having you as a guest on the show, Stephen.
Thank you very much for having me, Danielle. It's been a pleasure.
Of course. And until next time, take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.